Yeah, it's kind of a ritual of welcoming into the family. Once you get wooden shoes, you're stuck with us. You're in. You're not getting out. Welcome to With You Podcast. I'm David, a marriage and family therapist and professor.
And I'm Tara, a doula and childbirth educator.
Yeah, we've been married 30 years and have 4 kids that we've raised.
And we love to talk about relationships and life transitions, so we hope you'll join us. Hey there. So today we are going to talk about traditions and rituals.
Tradition. I don't think we can sing anymore
No,
or we
we're
have to
not.
pay
No
royalties.
singing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Too
And people
expensive.
might stop listening. We are really excited to talk about this because it's kind of an important part of our family life. And at the time of recording, we're entering the holiday time. So we're thinking a lot about family traditions, rituals, and rites of passage.
That's right. And how they, why are they important? And for us, they're important for a bunch of different reasons. What are those reasons, David? Well, what those reasons are? Well, because I think the first thing is we do them together. Rituals are things that we do that help us with a sense of belonging.
Yeah. So, there's a difference between traditions and rituals and rites of passage. They're all related. But what do you think of when you think of a tradition? Like, what's one of the first things you...
I think of holidays.
Yeah.
I think
A lot of people have traditions around holidays. Every kind of holiday, even like July 4th, Halloween, like all of them.
Because I think traditions usually for us revolve around food. So when we think about
Yes.
traditions, I think about food.
Food, that's definitely what we think of first.
Yeah. Like 4th of July, we're going to have a picnic and might go to the beach.
Yeah.
But it's doing those things together.
It's around certain kinds of food and who prepares them and what you remember from the years past.
How about for you when you think of traditions?
Well, I think of cultural things too, for me.
Yeah.
Because I've lived in a few different cultures. And so there's a lot of things that traditions that come down, not just from your family of origin that get passed on, but from your whole culture and your whole, family line, wherever you came from.
Well, that's
they
like
get passed down.
When we were living in Hungary, no one knew about Thanksgiving.
Go figure.
I couldn't figure it out. It's like, where do you get the turkey? And they're like, why are you eating turkey?
We don't sell turkeys
do
here.
That. Remember how hard it was to find turkey?
Yeah. I was pretty proud of the meal that I came up with for Thanksgiving in Europe. I had to be very creative.
Well, the oven and the refrigerator were about the
Like Barbie size.
Yeah. It was like one of those easy bake ovens.
Yeah.
And you did, because we had a bunch of Fulbrights.
Yeah, we had American
student
teachers, Fulbright students over and tried to recreate an American Thanksgiving meal. So that was fun. So that's a very American tradition. There's a lot of family traditions around food and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I was thinking about culture, like our culture and then other cultures.
Yeah.
You don't have that.
Yeah, no, they have different holidays. Like in Hungary, geese were being sold.
Yeah.
for Christmas.
St. Martin's Day.
And there's things around fish and, so there's a lot of different, and we're thinking of, the foods.
Yeah. So we're still on.
Yeah. So
on
traditions do tend to center around, I think, holidays, maybe rites of passage or family gatherings.
Yeah.
And meals that are shared for different celebrations.
Because even though we're talking about food, it's about relationships. It's us getting together, spending time together, whether it's with our kids or with our extended families or with friends. So I think a lot of times traditions are what help us circle around together and spend time together.
When I was thinking about this, I was thinking for our family, traditions are what helped us create affection and connection.
Oh, that's really nice.
Good, right?
I like that.
Should I coin that?
I think you should.
Affection and connection. They were all things that enhanced that.
Yeah.
Because that's what we were going for.
Well, and that's when we talk about them, then when we talk about tradition, it always stimulates memories. So there's kind of the time together, there's the meaning making, and then it recreates the memory or connects back to the memory.
Yeah. And when you say that reminds me it ties into story and how those things get passed down through story.
Yeah.
You sit around at Thanksgiving or whatever and tell the stories of, remember when grandma did this when she was a teenager, or you pass on those stories and that's how they get orally kind of told in the family tree.
Yeah, and I think when you bring families together, you then take those stories and figure out which ones are you going to hold on to, which
Mhm.
memories, which meaning making are important, and which ones do you let go of,
Mhm.
and maybe make new ones.
Yeah. And then when we became a family, yeah, we had to decide which traditions are we going to keep
Yeah,
in our own family.
because we had very different cultural, well, similar and yet different cultural backgrounds.
Mhm.
You had the Australian convict kind
Okay.
of.
You always go back to my convict history.
Well, I just want people to know that you're naughty because I get misunderstood as
Yeah.
naughty. And, you have to understand it comes a long line for Tara of naughtiness. But yeah, so Australian, Kenyan,
Yeah.
Dutch, British.
Yeah. And yet a lot of overlap with our
Yeah.
faith traditions and things.
Well, and that's the other thing. Traditions are anchored not just in culture and family, but faith backgrounds.
Faith background for sure. That brings in a lot of tradition because it comes from way back.
Yeah.
And gets passed along. But that sometimes is mixed up with rituals. So we're talking about rituals too. And some ritual is just basically something you do over and over, but it's also there's a lot of meanings to what a ritual could be.
Yeah, I think family rituals happen around the traditions. So, like a ritual of having stuffing with giblets in it, right? That's a ritual.
That's your request.
Well, I think it's a ritual.
Giblets, for anybody listening, the guts of the turkey, the innards, the organs that should not be consumed. Something David wants in his stuffing. And so I make a separate batch that has the organs in it.
So
most
tasty.
Of us prefer the other kind without the giblets.
That irony taste to the stuffing, so good.
Yeah.
But so we have rituals which are kind of the behaviors that sit, I think, within tradition. And here's the kind of academic aside that there's some really good research on the effects of family tradition or family rituals within traditions. And there was this meta-analysis that was done over 50 years of research studies brought together on family rituals. And there was 3 main ideas, and kind of we've been talking around them, but it was increase kind of the parent's sense of competence. So family rituals, family behaviors, it really helps us as parents have a sense of competence that we're anchored somewhere in terms of the ritual. So we talk about that in the daily kind of ideas of bedtime ritual and family mealtime rituals.
Yeah, that just reminded me of something I'll have to come back to later.
Okay, let me go the other.
Remind me about meals later.
Remind you about meals. Well, we're always about the food, so I'm not sure that's going to be hard. And then positive child adjustment. So what we see when there's family rituals, parents feel more competent. Kids have a better sense of adjustment because there's some regularity and some connection to something bigger than themselves, kind of our idea of perspective. Something predictable that's going to happen over and over. I know our kids were always looking forward to that. It was something like our travel rituals.
Yeah, even around road trips. Yeah.
And then the last is what I think is the most important is positive marital satisfaction. And I didn't say that creepy at all.
No, not at all. If only they could see your face. And the raised eyebrows.
That's right. Woo. So we feel better as parents, kids adjust better, and the couple's relationship is better when we have family rituals.
That sounds like a win-win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we go back to meals?
Yeah. Well, yes, but we were thinking about this and thinking, what were our family traditions and things, because we did come from some shared things from our families that we grew up in. But then we got to decide as 23-year-olds, like, what's going to be ours?
Yeah.
What do we keep? What do we not really want to continue? And what just developed over time and out of survival and whatever. And one of the ones I want to talk about came out of survival for me. And I hadn't even thought of it when I was kind of
doing our pre-show
making notes. Yeah. But we thought about traditions in terms of what are some daily ones that people have.
Yeah.
And for us, when the kids were little, this does not apply now, but it was around, we had a lot of traditions around bedtime. And I like to say bedtime, bath time, and books.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah, I remember that.
We always
that stimulates the memories.
Yeah. We always wound down the day with having them on our laps or sitting around us on the couch reading books.
Yeah.
And then bath time I know bath time can feel like a hassle for a mom of kids, but I just felt like it was a good way to get them. Partly it was a ritual. It was like it was expected. It would happen after dinner time. They were usually a mess after dinner time, and also just getting kids in water can
Yeah.
change everything. It turns into play, it turns into relaxation. It's a good preparation for bedtime. So bedtime was not like a battle. It was like, oh yay, I get to take a bath with all my toys. And we also had even like waterproof books. Like we were big into the
Big into
stories.
books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then around bedtime, it was like a special time of connection. It was never a punishment to go to your room. It was like special time where we sat with them on their bed and prayed over them as we said goodnight. And then,
Yeah. It was always hard to kind of argue as they got older that you can't have books in the bathroom, because we had books in the bathroom from the very beginning.
yeah,
So, you're like, hey, stop reading in there.
yeah, that
We
was the
need,
thing I didn't know was a thing until we got married.
but
reading in
we
the
started
bathroom.
with bath time
Yeah,
and having
yeah.
books in there. So, and the bath time was different. I mean, so that was really young kids. You didn't give the kids baths when they were in middle school.
No,
Yeah.
that
So
was really little.
family traditions change
Yeah,
over
so
time.
they do change over time. Yeah, there comes a time when you no longer bathe your children.
Yeah, because you can get in trouble for that.
But we still had bedtime routines,
We
even when they
did.
were older,
We did.
of some sort. Even if it was at some time, it was us waiting up until they got home at 1:00 in the morning. They'd say,
Yeah.
"Mom, you didn't have to wait up." Yeah, I did.
And
I want to say goodnight.
it went to that kind of affection and connection that you talked about, that
Mhm.
the daily ones were places that we could connect. Like bedtime was hugs, kisses, there was affection, there was
Mhm.
checking in on the day, kind of
What are
high
some other
lows.
daily routines that people? Oh, the high-low thing. Some people do that.
Yeah.
Talk about what was your best moment of the day and your worst moment.
Yep. And we would have mealtime ritual that we would have a question, right? People could ask questions, and we would have
Mhm.
maybe one.
Anything goes at
Yeah.
our dinner table.
Yeah. Yeah. The kids stopped bringing friends over because of our dinner time conversation.
You gotta be prepped for that.
But that was another one around food, but it was about time connecting together. We made sure that we sat around the table and had a
Mhm.
conversation, and it wasn't every day, but we made sure we did it at least a couple times a week.
Yeah. I mean, we were aspirationally wanting to do it every day of the week, but as as your kids grow and schedules get crazy and you have practices and things in the evenings, it gets almost impossible to do it every night, but making it sort of an expectation of when we're here, we have dinner together.
And that was a thing in parenting with you. I guess we're not done parenting, but in parenting with you, the really cool thing was to see how you would get creative. We'd have to shift over time as the kids developed and their
Mhm.
activities got different. We didn't lose the rituals, but they kind of morphed, and you
Mhm.
found ways to be creative to kind of change. So reading time became kind of quiet reading time when they were an adolescent. It wasn't us reading with them, but there was that dedicated reading
Yeah.
time. But you would do that, and I think that's important for all of us to think about, is we need to kind of not get stuck in this is the only thing we can do, and developmentally
Yeah, and
change
let
it
it
over
change,
time.
and that's okay. That was one of the things I was thinking of before that I wanted to come back to.
Oh, to the meal.
The meal thing.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because for whoever is the person in the family who's responsible for putting food on the table every night, that can be such a monotonous thing of family life. It can be
Mhm.
such a weight and a responsibility and just a groundhog's day over and over, like what you want to eat again, like it can become a burden.
Yeah.
And I felt that with raising kids who are always hungry and always like, oh, what are we going to eat tonight? And then it can become a thing that can become a conflict too, and
Yeah.
can become something you feel shamed about because you can't cook every night, and so you're always scrambling. And so I gave myself a ritual that helped me have a structure.
Oh, what was it?
Do you remember what this? I forget. It wasn't for a long time, but there was a number of years when the kids were really busy where I said we were having meatless Mondays, Taco Tuesdays, one pot Wednesdays. I forget what Thursday was. Maybe I gave myself a night off, and pizza was on Fridays. And,
Yeah.
and I mean,
Pizza
we
was
still
my
do. We
day-
still
my
do
day.
pizza
Yeah,
Fridays.
we still do pizza Fridays.
And my parents did that. That was something that was like a
So just an aside, one of the best pizza Fridays we have are when you get that non bread, just
Mm-hmm.
pre-made naan bread. You butter it, and then cheese, and you just olive oil. I don't
Yeah.
know. As you can see, I don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I am the taste tester, but that's an amazing. It was just fun. You found creative ways,
and then we would
got
make
the
up different
kids.
toppings, and they could put them on themselves.
We went through a
That was fun.
phase of the little personal pizzas where they're like egg muffins, and we had our own little personal pizzas. That was horrible.
I don't remember that. I must have blocked that out.
We got rid of that right away. So
Yeah, so that was a way to give myself structure around that ritual I wanted to have, but felt burdensome.
mhm.
But it was important to me, so I, gave myself a way to make it like not so just every night was what am I going to do, but it kind of put it into a narrower choice.
Well, and frankly, I think it was really helpful because when you're busy with young kids or busy with teenagers, it's even hard. I mean, I can remember where we had tears of like, what are we going to make for dinner? Like just stressed out by one more choice, and that you had those days lined up. It was known.
Yeah,
I mean,
think ahead.
the ritual. Yeah,
the grocery store. It's One Pot Wednesday tomorrow, so I'll get stuff for chili.
Yep.
Or whatever.
And it just kind of freed up a little bit of the mental energy and was good for us as parents.
Yeah. So those are some of the daily rituals.
Yeah, let's move on to
more weekly?
Yeah, maybe weekly rituals.
Yeah, at first I thought what would be weekly, but we really did have some. So we never lived in the same state as our parents.
That's correct.
When we were raising our kids. So we always wanted to check in with them, and that can always become a thing too. Like, how long has it been since we talked to our parents? And so that became just every Sunday.
Yeah.
Every Sunday is kind of check-in time. And it kind of morphed out of, that's what I did when I was in college. I was in Wheaton. My parents were in Arizona. So it was before cell phones.
Yeah, and before computers.
They couldn't text you.
We couldn't do the whole emails.
A dial phone in the dorm room with a long swirly cord, and they would call at a certain time on Sunday afternoon, so I would be home. And so it kind of just grew out of that.
Yeah, I think I remember that long cord sitting in the hallway so my roommate wasn't listening and could talk in the hallway, which was not any more private. As I think about it, that was stupid because we're out in the major area, but we're having a conversation with the folks. And we kind of try to continue that, to have a weekly check-in with the kids because our kids are living all over the place now.
Yeah, we've tried to continue that. So that's kind of a ritual.
Then there's our faith. Our faith background helps us in terms of weekly worship. And so on Sundays is when we spend time in community, and that's really helpful. And it's a pattern that's really helpful with the kids too. That they just knew, okay, Sundays we're going to church. We're spending time in Sunday school and church worship and socializing with our friends.
You know what I remember too now? We don't do this anymore, but we used to get the newspaper just the Sunday edition.
Oh, that's right.
And that was part of our Sunday morning ritual. We'd all hand out parts of the paper and do the New York Times crossword or whatever.
Well, the popular parts were the comics, the sports section, and the crosswords.
The arts and entertainment.
And the arts and
just the headlines.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of the meat in between.
No, it was all the interaction pieces.
Yeah.
That was right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
And when I was growing up, it was after Sunday, we'd either have a potluck in the church basement with everybody, or we'd go to a fast food restaurant.
You don't want to name names.
The person had a red hair and pigtails. So that was the restaurant we went to.
Is that Burger King?
No, it's not Burger King.
I know.
Actually, the Burger King, the Ronald McDonald, and Miss Wendy all had red hair.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
No,
let's just keep going. So there's the weekly ones, and then the more annual.
Oh no, I still wanted to touch on one more weekly thing.
Oh,
and maybe this is a
more?
sign that we didn't talk about it, because a weekly date night is something that a lot of couples do that's really connecting.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And we weren't that good at that, to be honest. No. When our kids were little, we felt
that's what got sacrificed.
It did, and that wasn't probably the right thing to sacrifice.
We don't recommend that,
we
but
don't.
Man, we were just holding on.
But we get the survival mode. That's kind of what we felt like we were in, and probably a good thing to do in survival mode is to double down on the affection and connection, but we didn't have much of a ritual. I think we're getting better at date night now that we're we have fewer kids in the house.
Yeah,
So
well, and
now-
that's once a week we sit here and talk to each other. So
this is it.
this is our date night. Welcome to our date night.
Yeah.
Well, I think we also with our careers, a lot of times the nighttime wasn't available. So we
That's
did
true.
when they were adolescents. Partly we got away
We met for breakfast.
we met for breakfast, and we had to get away from the house because I don't know about the rest of you, but our kids had this interesting listening process that they would not be able to hear us when we said their names, but when we started talking quietly, they would participate in the conversation. So they didn't have a hearing problem; they had a listening problem. And for us to have any kind of
Well,
personal
yeah, when they're
communication,
teenagers, they stay up late. So, like when they're little,
Yeah.
our kids had an earlier bedtime. So we had the evening time was usually quieter, and we could kind of catch up with each other, talk, watch a show,
Mhm.
have a glass of wine, whatever.
Yeah.
When they were older,
Dance,
they're
right?
they're up later than you are. So
Yeah.
there's always somebody around. There's not really that quiet connection time. So we did find a different way to do that.
Yeah.
We would we dropped them off for school. If your academic schedule allowed it, we'd meet for breakfast.
Yeah.
Found other ways to have quiet time.
Well, and our when our parents were near to us, we would travel, and that would be a getaway. It wasn't a weekly thing, but when I would teach abroad, our parents would take care of the kids so you could come
Mhm.
with, and that was
Yeah.
a good getaway.
Yeah,
But that wasn't a weekly thing.
no.
No,
No.
that was a sporadic thing.
Yeah, and that was much later in the life. Yeah, so that's kind of some of the weekly things we did, but okay, let's just make an aside. We're kind of sitting here talking like on our quote unquote date night, and we're sitting here just talking into an empty room. We would love feedback. We
Yeah.
really, really would. We hope we're talking to some people
Well,
out
just
there.
wait. I would like good feedback.
Only good.
Only good.
But we'd love to hear just your rituals and traditions that have been connecting for your family. We'll talk about this at other times, and we'd love to share things that we never thought of or things that have worked in your family or that are culturally special for you.
Yeah. And think about daily, weekly, annually, and kind of that's associated with your faith or associated unique to a child's age.
Yeah.
That would be great. How do they let us know about things?
You can email us
Okay.
at withyoupodcast
Oh,
at gmail.com. We'll put it in the show notes. So check out the show notes.
okay. Or they could go to our website and reach
You
us.
can go to our
there too.
website, withyouprojects.com or withyoupodcast.com.
Cool. Or
Okay.
you could use the old
That's our
dial-up phone
service
that goes
announcement. don't
and
think you
call
can
us,
find
right?
those
You
anymore.
can. Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, no, email would be awesome. So now that we've already kind of gone through some more frequent traditions and rituals, what about I think this is the first thing that comes to mind for most people is the annual ones.
Yeah.
Holidays.
Yeah, the family traditions. And so we had one, and I'd like just to talk about kind of Christmas / St. Nick's Day for our family, because that's a unique ritual.
Yeah, that was a big one that we kind of chose together
Yeah,
on
that
our
was-
own to make a new sort of way of doing things in our family because it does get complicated. We're gonna our number one thing that we've heard people want to talk about is in-laws and how to share holidays with in-laws, and so we are going to talk about that.
Yeah, and this
This
kind
is-
of developed from
this-
that
it
for
did.
us. Yeah.
It did because it gets complicated when now we lived in one state. Both of our sets of parents lived in other states that were far
Yeah.
away. So when it came to Christmas, everybody wanted to be together, but we had to figure out a way to share that. And we ended up doing every other year kind of
Yeah.
thing, taking turns. But when we tried to figure out how do we make a special time for us and our kids, because I
For
think
our-
that's
our family of
us,
origin.
our small family, and not get it lost in the other stuff if we're gathering with all of my extended family or
Yeah, my extended
your
family.
extended
My
family.
extended
when
family.
you're
That's like a
serious.
50-person deal.
It has gotten big. So, and this is how it came about. I was doing a thing for one of our children's first grade class where I think we were preparing for the Christmas party, and I decided to do coloring pages for the first graders about some kind of country, different countries' traditions around Christmas. So I naturally decided to look up the ones that had to do with your Dutch heritage
Mhm.
and my Australian heritage. Of course, the Australian coloring page was a fat Santa on the beach because it's summertime in Australia for Christmas.
Yeah.
But the Dutch one, I was intrigued to find this coloring picture of Saint Nicholas. I had never heard of the whole Saint Nicholas tradition, and that he was this real guy, and that's kind of
Bishop of,
Sinterklaas,
yeah.
Saint Nicholas, Sinterklaas, Santa Claus. That's
Hmm.
where it all. I didn't know that
Yeah.
until I looked that up, and I was looking up the story, the rituals, the traditions around that, and how Saint Nick's Day, and the saints all have a day.
A name
That's a
day.
name, yeah, and it's December 5th for Saint Nicholas.
Mhm.
So that's the
Is it
day. Is it
December 5th?
6th or
I think
6th?
it's the
It's 5th or
6th.
6th, and
It's the
depending
6th.
on where it's on. It's different apparently.
Yeah.
But anyway,
We'll
5th
say
or
the
6th,
6th.
early December.
Yep.
You celebrate Saint Nick, and it's the story of Saint Nicholas is that he was a bishop, and he was very good-hearted man
Mhm.
and benevolent, and that
Mhm.
he helped people in the community, and it had
Yeah.
something to do with, there are stories
most-
that may or may not be true about girls putting their socks to dry in the window, and he put gold into them, and
Yeah, because they were a widow family with a bunch of girls, and so their shoes were on the porch, and he would leave gold coins
yeah,
for them and leave some treats for
which
them.
is what led to the whole stocking thing.
Yep.
And so it was like such a light bulb moment for me. And then thinking, well, what if we did that on December 5th with our kids? So they wake up to the shoes filled with treats because St. Nick puts gold coins and candy
Mhm.
and things in your shoes overnight.
And who knew
And
you
we-
could get gold coin chocolates?
Right. You can. And so what if we did that with just our family, which would be special, and then we can do our own things with our extended family on December 25th, but has the added benefit of forcing you to do a lot of your shopping before December.
That's
So
right.
it leaves that time, the Advent time, to be less stressful and more quiet because you're not running around buying gifts at the last minute. So
Yeah.
we started that, and it's become
a thing. And yeah, so it's beneficial because we were able to travel every other year to the families we grew up in, and yet not lose our family time. And it bumped it earlier so that we could have our kind of faith focus and not necessarily get caught up in all the commercialism.
mhm,
And then the last one, which I thought was really cool, because I think a lot of times parents struggle with, what do we do about Santa Claus and lying to our kids, or
mhm.
how do we navigate that? And we were able to have a historical person that we could celebrate in terms of Saint Nick and play, but it was being able to talk about the history and the person, as well as kind
Right.
of the gift giving and the rituals that are around
Mhm.
Christmas and with Saint Nicholas.
Yeah, with a nice purpose behind them too.
Yeah, and it connected to our faith. So it was a win-win-win-win-win for us.
Yeah.
That came from Tara doing research.
Yeah. So that's been an ongoing thing that we have really enjoyed continuing.
Even
And
now, as we bring new people into the family, our kids
yes.
get engaged or married, and the extended family gets excited. We
And then we
do.
go get new wooden shoes with that new person's name engraved on them.
Yeah, it's kind of a ritual of welcoming into the family. Once you
Uh-huh.
get wooden shoes, you're stuck
You're
with us.
in.
You're in. You're not getting
There's
out.
no way to burn those shoes.
No, the wooden and your name does not come off the wooden
No.
shoes. So you're stuck with us.
Yes, we'll have to put a picture of that in the show notes. All of
Yeah.
our wooden shoes under the Christmas tree. It's a
I'll-
little unique.
Yeah, our Dutch family kind of emailed me one time when I put a
Said
picture.
that wasn't appropriate.
They said, "Yeah, you don't put your wooden shoes under the Christmas tree.
It's mixing
It's
a
mixing
couple things that shouldn't be
and
mixed.
They made they shared a very powerful metaphor
Yes, they did.
to say
Which we
that's the
probably won't
wrong
share.
that's the wrong
It's
thing to
colorful.
do. So but we have, so for us, that was a unique, that brought in culture, faith, but out of a kind of a developmental necessity of how do we continue to honor our families and
Mhm,
yet have our own family time.
mhm.
And it worked really, really well. And it's still, we're hoping it'll continue on with our kids, and if they have kids throughout the generation, because
Yeah.
it's fun, and it connects us to meaningful things in our lives. It's that affection and connection.
Exactly.
I'm going to hold on to
Yeah,
that.
I
That
know.
is so
I know.
cool.
And then so other ones that are throughout the year, I think a lot of people have traditions around how they celebrate birthdays. Some people just don't acknowledge them at all. You find that out when you marry somebody. Either birthdays were a big deal for their family or not a
Mhm.
big deal. How do you celebrate that? How do
Or
gifts go?
or you can have trauma around your birthday.
Yeah. Yeah, all kinds of
Yeah.
things. We didn't have a ton of we had celebrations, but we didn't have a lot of ongoing traditions really, except that we did celebrate. We didn't go overboard on gifts. We tried to focus more on giving events, shared events, because we felt like, well, a lot of gifts were coming in from grandparents and friends and stuff. We had enough things. We have a small house and 4 children, so space is at a premium.
Yeah, and we wanted to move from stuff to relationship, given, you
Yeah.
know us with you. So our focus really was on relationship. So I forget, probably when they're in middle school, we started doing birthdays were individual meals. That child would go out with you and I,
Yeah.
and they would get to pick the restaurant,
Yeah.
and we would have individual focus time. And that
We'd
was
have a
the
nice
kind of
conversation.
ritual and gift. And it continues today.
Yeah. And the gifts that we really encouraged our parents, the kids' grandparents to give was like,
Cash.
no.
Oh, no, 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 not cash.
Like
They
a
could give me
membership to
cash.
the zoo or
Oh,
to
that's
the
right.
museum
Yeah, yeah,
or,
yeah.
like things that we could do together and that were relational but didn't bring more stuff into the house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kept on asking for tuition, things like that, but, the zoo membership was nice too.
Yeah, yeah. I
I was
liked that. I think
thankful.
I liked that way more than the kids liked it, to be honest.
Well, it got you
I
out of the
kinda
house
miss
with
the zoo
them.
days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and museums, and that's
Mhm.
the nice thing about where we live in the Chicagoland area. There's plenty of things to
Mhm,
do
that's
that
true.
way,
Yeah,
and
we
it's
have a lot of.
helpful. So as you think about that, hopefully some of these ideas would be helpful. Rituals, so on a daily, weekly, annual, but there's also life transitions, and maybe we can just give a nod to this, um, and
Yeah, 'cause
do it another time, but
there's a lot to be said about this, but I think this tips almost into the more rites of passage category. But these are connecting things
yeah.
in families and between families and cultures. And actually, what we'd like to talk more about someday is that there's really a need for more rites of passage in our culture.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
mark important
important
transitions.
transition. So a few that we identified, starting kind of in order of when they happen is birth,
Yeah,
and I could do a whole talk just about that, how in a lot of cultures there are lots of rituals and rites of passage around a child entering the world. And I
mhm.
try to encourage parents to think up something. What would you like to do as your ritual when your child takes their first breath? Like, it's really sacred. These life transitions are sacred moments, and it helps us as humans to have some sort of way to mark that, or make, honor the how sacred that is.
Oh, that's interesting, because I hadn't you went to that place. I was thinking about once we had one child, adding another, having birth, that we had kinda some rituals around the existing child giving a gift to
Yeah, the welcoming
the
of the new
welcoming of the new
child.
child, rather than that new birth taking away something from
Mhm.
the existing child, that there's a contribution. And so we did some gifts that the older sibling would be involved in getting a gift and giving it to the baby as they came into the family.
Mhm. We
Um,
did have the baby give gifts to the child, though, but our kids were smart enough to go, "Wait,
yeah,
how
that
did the
thing just
baby
came
go
out.
shopping?"
Yeah, yeah.
That didn't wait.
When
That
did
did
they go to Walmart? Between the hospital and home?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, but yes, there's a lot of rites of passage that center around preparing for and welcoming a new person in your family. However
hmm
that comes about, adoption, birth, like whatever way a new person enters a family, there should be rites of
yeah.
passage. It's a sacred moment as you grow your family. So we love to see more of those, and
And
we'd love to hear more about some cultural things around
yeah.
time of birth.
And it becomes the story, right? It becomes the narrative. So then it's this special grounding spot to tell the story of you've entered the world. I think it was City Slickers, that movie back in the
Mm.
80s, where
Billy Crystal wakes up to his
his
mom
mom
telling
calling
the
at
birth story.
4:31. It was 4:31, and she tells the whole story, and he rolls his eyes for most of it, but you can also see a tenderness, because that's the ritual, that's the connection
Mhm.
to family life and part of his story.
Yeah, and I think what gets forgotten too is that when a child enters a family, there's also the birth of the parent in a new way. So a lot of cultures do a really good job of rituals around new motherhood, especially. Like
Mm,
um, a lot of families that I know, their parent will fly in from, especially China. Some countries like that do a really
mhm.
good job of that. The mother just, even if she has a
Comes.
yeah, she comes for months
Hmm.
and takes care of the new mother and
Hmm.
has special foods around that.
How does the
And
dad feel about that?
well, sometimes they both come. I don't know. Every family does it differently, but
Yeah.
we just don't have much at all around that,
Mhm.
around becoming new parents and the rituals around that.
I think cigars, right?
Cigars and baby showers, and
Or
then you're
chocolate
done.
bars that are pink or blue, or
Yeah.
that was back in the 90s again.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to hear more about that from you.
Yes, and ways that we can create some of those things. So next, after the baby's here, I mean, the first thing I thought of is that a lot of faith traditions, there's sacrament of baptism or dedication of the child or something like that that enters the child into the faith community.
Hmm.
So that's a ritual that
Yeah,
often happens that people feel is really important for their child becoming part of something bigger than themselves.
that's right.
And there's clothing around it, there's parties, there's food, there's all kinds
There's
of
food.
there's food.
It's so good.
There's a cake.
That's right. And being able to kind of connect not just to the family, but connect to the faith community over history, that
Mhm.
there's this long time connection,
Yeah.
that it's been a ritual that's been happening for generation upon generation. So there's this connection to the family you're in, but this connection to the faith community
The
you're
faith
in.
community, and then just eons of time
Hmm.
that these things have been passed down.
Yeah. So sometimes I think the danger is we do these rituals without really thinking about them. And
Mhm.
I want us to kind
That's
of
a good point.
challenge ourselves, of rather than as, oh, that's just something we do, but to really be purposeful, to
Mhm.
think about, okay, so what is this about? And it can have lots of different meanings, but what's the story you're going to tell to your child, or that's going to continue on, that connects to the memory, the belonging, the sense of agency that these rituals are supposed to have. And there's lots of them. I mean, within our faith tradition, there's baptism, there's communion, there's marriage, there's these wonderful grounding, kind of
Mhm.
developmental, as well as uh, faith kind of relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. It's a good thing to think about what all those things mean and why we keep doing them.
Yeah.
I never thought much about, well, we'll get to weddings, but what we do in our weddings in our culture, like, from wearing white to all the bridesmaids wearing the same color to, throwing a bouquet. There's all kinds of things that we all do just because that's what everybody does.
Yeah, and it's a good photo op.
Yeah, it's good to think about the meanings behind those and make
I
it
know.
like
So
meaningful.
so what was the meaning about us shoving cake in each other's face?
I think we agreed not to do that, and then we still
Okay.
did it.
Yeah. I if I remember right, who started that?
Is that where we're gonna go? How about we get back to
Okay. Coming of age.
yeah,
Maybe we'll talk
that's
about coming
another
of
big
age.
rite of passage that maybe we focused on more. You've already known if you've listened to any of our podcasts, one of the first things we wanted to talk about was adolescence.
Woohoo!
Somehow, that's something
Just
we have
love
found
adolescence.
as an important part of the human experience. But there's a lot of cultural traditions around the coming of age, the coming into into
Yeah,
adulthood or
either
whatever.
entering adolescence or exiting adolescence, kind of moving from childhood into
Hmm.
that or out of it. Cultures have a lot of good rituals around that.
Yeah, and there's some that are not so good, honestly. There's a lot of cultures that have some things that,
Yeah,
that involve marking the body and stuff that can be painful that just are passed down that maybe
we need to
don't need to be
question. Yeah,
continued.
yeah.
So we did try to create some things in our family that,
It didn't
now,
involve
no, there
marking the
was no more,
bodies. No,
no marking of the
no.
body. But we did starting with our first one and continued it with all four of them when they turned 13.
I think that's right.
13, I think, because we thought when they become a teenager, it's kind of entering this new phase where we kind of gave them a bit more of a leash, a little bit more,
More
freedom
responsibility.
and responsibility, and wanted to help them like understand this new responsibility and this new kind of entering the beginning of adulthood. So we had all the people that were important in their life, the adults, like my siblings, your siblings, their grandparents, any like youth pastor, somebody important to them in their life, would write a letter. And we put these letters all in a book with pictures of those people and a letter from that person kind of telling them what they thought was important about becoming an adult and how they, their pieces of advice.
Yeah.
So they all have this booklet somewhere. Hopefully
Yeah.
they all still
I hope they
look at
kept
it.
it.
But it was kind of our way of trying to gather and impart, because honestly, some of those people that are in their books are no longer living on the earth.
Yeah.
So it was a special time to collect their personal thoughts and
Yeah, the wisdom and the kind of speaking into their lives, precious things, which I think at the time we liked the idea, but I don't think we realized how important it was, not just as a ritual, but a connection to relationships.
Yeah, because we also asked them to kind of give a blessing, like
Yeah.
what would be my hope for you as you grow up. And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of like to look at those
I
now.
know. Let's go. We'll crawl in the attic after this and look for them. So that was 13. We also did one at 16, and that was so much fun. I think I kind of got more excited about that one. So you were excited about the letter book. I was excited about the experiential learning. So
Yeah.
we built a kind of scavenger hunt with their friends, and had, when they were turning 16, divided them up into teams, and I kind of geeked out a little bit, and I had a cognitive task and an emotional task and a relational task and socially awkward tasks, and we put them all around town, and they had to kind of go. And the whole point of the rituals were they were connected to some form of development that was happening in their body, their mind, their relationships.
We may overthink these things.
Yeah, and but they had a ton of fun. That we got them disposable cameras. They took pictures.
They had to prove each task that they did. They had to take a picture of it, and that was before they all had cell phones.
No, they had to talk to strangers. We gave them buffs. They had they were wearing like the green team,
sort of
and
like
the red
the
team.
TV show Survivor, were kind of in that era where that was a popular show. So they had their team colors, and they ran around town. And
do you remember where they ended?
At the pizza place.
Yeah, because why?
Because boys are hungry.
And we always do rituals around food.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of
fun. Although Annika's too. We did the 3 boys, and then Annika's birthday's in January, so we did hers in the mall, which the girls did appreciate.
Yeah. And I think there was it was in the mall.
Yeah. And we still ended at a restaurant.
Yeah,
that was a good restaurant too. Yeah,
that was a
fun.
good restaurant.
Yeah.
So we had these activities that tried to mark time, but would be celebratory. It was celebrating that they were having these changes, and it goes back to kind of the episodes of Embracing the Weird and the things that we talked about before. That it's a special time. It's not a problematic time. It's a unique opportunity to celebrate them, and so we built that in, and was a lot of fun. Yeah, tried to launch them into the new phase and reassure ourselves that we were going to be okay. Yeah.
There's a lot of countries that have different ages that are the special coming of age. That we see kids around town all the time doing their quinceañera. And I know in Australia,
those are big dresses.
Yeah, they wear the pretty dresses and take pictures and have a big party. And in Australia, 21 is the big thing. You get a key, like there's a key to the house kind of thing. Like there's a whole thing
really?
about a key. Yeah.
I was going to say a lot of drinking. Is that not Australia?
No, I think
that's judgmental on my part.
Yeah, and that's more the American tradition when you turn 21. Yeah, so kind of a few others that we thought of that are really typical is any graduation. Like usually you think of a college graduation or a high school graduation as a big transition into a new life phase, and there's a lot of celebrations around that, and different families have their own traditions centered around that. But it's gotten a little out of hand with the kindergartners wearing caps and gowns too.
Yeah.
So, but it's usually marking some sort of change, some sort of leap into a new phase of life, and people are generous in celebrating that, usually giving kids graduating from high school maybe laundry baskets and things, kind of denoting their new things they're going to have to independence they're going to have to take care of.
Well, and then kind of getting to the end of life, we have rituals around death and funerals, and that was a big part of my life. So for those of you that don't know, I grew up as a funeral director's son, and we didn't live in the funeral home, but we played in the funeral home a lot. And so Tara and I often joke around that I have a really strange relationship with death, but it was because of familiarity and because of rituals of the idea of flowers and having a wake, or being able to be present and say goodbye to the loved one that has died. And I saw my dad help with kids with their grief in terms of drawing pictures and leaving it in the casket, or leaving little mementos of kind of that connection
Mm-hmm.
and the loss and the grief, and how we build ways of talking about that. Because I think one of the things that are important with rituals, especially around death, is making it accessible and having meaning. I think a lot of times there's so much fear and there's so much trying to avoid it that we don't talk about it. We shelter and don't spend the rituals to kind of honor it. And I think other cultures have really good rituals around
Mm-hmm.
honoring their dead, honoring the life that was lived. And it's almost a celebration.
Mm-hmm.
There's grief and there's sadness, but it's celebrating a life well lived, however long. And so pictures and storytelling. I mean, we have a Irish friend, and he tells us about Irish wakes and kind of the celebration of kind of laughing, but also tearing up about how important that person was in our lives, and we're going to miss them, but they also have left
Mm-hmm.
that piece with us.
Yeah, and in the Jewish tradition, sitting with the family.
Yeah, Shiva,
Yeah,
sitting
yeah,
Shiva.
yeah. I think you're right. We do hold it at arm's length in our culture and have a lot of fear, and so it becomes mysterious and even more fearful. And so we need more of those rituals that we embrace, so that we keep, because it's about the connection with the people who are left behind as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
and continuing the stories, because
hmm
that's where the stories happen.
yeah,
When you're celebrating that life, everybody's, oh, remember when they did that? And then those stories get continued on. So we miss an
hmm
opportunity to kind of continue that
yeah.
person's legacy.
To honor and
Mm-hmm.
remember. So
Mm-hmm.
so this has been a little bit about family rituals, a little bit about tradition, kind of life transitions. Hopefully you have some ideas that you'll
Yeah,
share with
hopefully it
us.
sparks some new ideas, and also some you'd like to share with us, because we'd love to hear them. But I always tell my families who just had a new baby that kids love ritual, that some structure is your friend, and we really believe that. That's one thing that kind of gave us some, I don't know, some predictability and some
Hmm.
things to hold on to in our family. And hopefully now that our kids are adults, there's something to look back to as, oh, we always did this, and we maybe want to continue some of these things with our kids. So we hope you'll think of some new ideas and have a good time sharing them with your family.
Yeah, have fun with your rituals.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to With You podcast.
We hope you had a good time, had fun, learned something. We would love for you, if you enjoyed this, or if you're wanting to give it another try, to like and subscribe.
Yeah, and we hope you'll follow what we're doing at withyoupodcast.com and come back for more.